Did you know Rick while he was working in law enforcement?
He was a correction officer.
So we're clear he was a correctional officer. I'm deciding to f your life up. Rick, bro, I'm gonna f your life up. For fun. There's a few times. This is not new. I do this all the time. There they go. Oh man, Ricky's crew. He said he got a $2 million crew in New York City. He was talking about the NYPD.
How do you feel about Bossa giving you the name Officer Ricky? I just want to hear it from you.
Baby, I'm worth too much money to even be, sidetracked on this carpet. No, this is not the G-Unit sneaker. Sorry. Listen, everybody over there at G-Unit, when y'all was out of business.
50 Cent has built a reputation as one of hip-hop's biggest trolls, and over the years, he's taken rap beef to a whole new level. From acting like a debt collector and demanding money from his own artists to buying out 200 front-row seats at Ja Rule's show just to make the venue look empty, he's done it all.
I understand in October you did something to get back at Ja Rule.
Yeah.
And please tell the people what you did, because this is
I
quite
bought like the first 4 rows in his concert. How much are the tickets? $15. I said, okay, give me the first 4 rows.
How many seats is that? It's got to be like 200 seats.
But out of everyone who's clashed with the G-Unit general, no one probably regrets it more than Rick Ross.
You're really embarrassing him because this guy came out and it was, I guess he started something. Yeah. So what you do is you come on and you go, I'm gonna up your life, and, which has really got to be unpleasant to hear.
Their feud kicked off after a run-in at the 2008 BET Awards. According to Ross, he didn't like the way 50 Cent looked at him that night, but 50 later claimed he didn't even remember Rick Ross being there. What started as a petty misunderstanding quickly spiraled into one of hip-hop's longest and most brutal rap beefs. And as the world watched, 50 Cent went on to systematically tear down Rick Ross's career.
Officer Ricky! Why you got me up in this man? Is it because I said you and your mama look like the Clumps? Or is it because I said your baby mama's a girl?
Let's get into it. By 2011, 50 Cent was looking back at how his beef with Rick Ross started, and to him, it was clear. Ross wanted the smoke for the sake of publicity. He says it all started because I looked at him the wrong way, 50 said in an interview. That means he just wanted to compete. He wanted to move up. He wanted to create awareness for himself, and he did it. Whether Ross was clout chasing or genuinely had a problem with 50, their run-in at the 2008 BET Awards set things in motion. Ross didn't waste any time. He went straight to the studio and fired the first shot with his track Mafia Music. The song had plenty of slick talk, but one line stood out. Burn the house down, you gotta buy another, don't forget the gas can.
Burn the house down, you gotta buy another, don't forget the gas can.
At first glance, it might sound like a typical rap flex, but that line had a deeper meaning. Ross was taking a direct shot at 50 Cent's baby mama, Shaniqua Tompkins, and the house fire that nearly offed her and their son. At the time, 50 and Shaniqua were locked in a bitter custody battle over their son Marquise, as well as the house that mysteriously went up in flames. The fire was no joke. 6 people were inside when it broke out, and the place was completely destroyed. Shaniqua publicly accused 50 of being behind it, saying, "He's obsessed. He's very obsessed. We're in litigation. We're fighting over the house. He said he was going to have someone come off me and watch what he does." She even claimed she heard intruders right before the fire started.
Someone threw something through the window and the house just ignited. Couldn't even make it downstairs. We had to jump out the window.
Do you think he hired someone to do it?
Yes, of course. I know he's too much of a coward to do anything himself.
But 50's reps were quick to shut down any suspicions, confirming that he was in Louisiana at the time of the incident. Regardless of what really happened, Rick Ross knew exactly what he was doing when he referenced the fire in his diss track. He had ammunition, and he was using it. Ross was feeling himself. In an interview about the track, he made it clear that he wasn't holding back. "I had to address a few things. I had to address a few people," Ross said. "Some people are gonna be effed, and that's the best way I can put it." At the time, Ross had every reason to be confident. His first 2 albums had already gone platinum, thanks to hits like Hustlin', and the industry had embraced him as a rising star. But Ross underestimated who he was going up against. 50 Cent wasn't just any rapper. He was a seasoned battle-hardened troll who specialized in career destruction. Ross wasn't the first to step into the ring with 50. Just ask Ja Rule, Fat Joe, The Game, or any of the others who had clashed with him. None of them came out the same. And 50 made it clear that he was going to wreck Ross's career just for fun.
I'm deciding to f your life up. Rick Ross, I'ma your life up. For fun. This a few times. This is not new. I do this all the time.
And from the outside looking in, everyone could see the writing on the wall. If 50 got his hands on some dirt, it was over. And unfortunately for Ross, he had a skeleton in his closet that was about to come crashing down. So where exactly did this whole Rick Ross was a cop narrative even come from? To break that down, we gotta rewind back to 2006, when a bombshell article titled "Screw Rick Ross" started making the rounds on the Smoking Gun website. The article dropped a bombshell, claiming that Rick Ross, real name William Leonard Roberts II, was actually a correctional officer before he ever picked up a mic. One of the most damning pieces of evidence was a picture of a young Rick Ross, dressed in a full correctional officer uniform, proudly shaking hands as he graduated from the academy. The report went even further, stating that Ross worked as a CO at the South Florida Reception Center in Dade County. For a rapper who had built his entire brand around being the biggest boss, a drug kingpin, and a certified street legend, this revelation was a PR disaster. Ross knew it too. At first, he outright denied everything. He went into full damage control mode, coming up with all kinds of explanations. One of the most bizarre ones was that hackers had photoshopped his face onto someone else's body, and that wasn't even the only problem. While people were still debating whether Rick Ross was a CO or not, another issue started haunting him: his name. Now, it's not uncommon for rappers to take inspiration from real-life gangsters when coming up with their stage names. We've seen it before with guys like Nipsey Hussle, Yo Gotti, Bugsy Malone, and even Machine Gun Kelly. But here's where Ross messed up. He didn't just borrow the name Rick Ross, he took it straight from a real, still-living, very much breathing ex-drug kingpin. And the real Rick Ross, aka Freeway Ricky Ross, was not happy about it.
Rick Ross used my whole name, you know, and he probably gained the most stardom out of everybody. You know, he raps about selling drugs.
Right.
And he never sold drugs. You know, he was a correctional officer.
And here's where things got even worse for Ross. If there's one thing you don't want to do in hip-hop, it's get into a beef with 50 Cent while having skeletons in your closet. Because 50 is like a shark who smells blood in the water. The moment Ross took that first shot at 50 with mafia music, he unintentionally opened the floodgates for a world of pain. 50 went straight for the He started with Officer Ricky, Go Ahead Try Me, a diss track where he put Ross on blast for pretending to be a gangster when he was really a former law enforcement officer. Soon after the first diss track, 50 took things to a whole new level. He didn't just make fun of Ross in his songs. He commissioned an entire animated cartoon series called Officer Ricky, where he relentlessly mocked Ross for his correctional officer past.
Officer Ricky? Why you got me up in this man? Is it because I said you and your mama look like the clumps? Or is it because I said your baby mama's a girl?
He made sure that every time people heard the name Rick Ross, they would immediately think of a badge, a uniform, and a CO standing in a prison. And the worst part was that it worked. As much as Ross tried to laugh it off, the Officer Ricky nickname started to stick. As always with 50 Cent, it wasn't enough for him to just go after the main target. He had to drag everyone in their circle into the war. This was no different when it came to his beef with Rick Ross. And one of the key players who ended up helping 50 in his mission to tear Ross down was Tia Kemp, the mother of Rick Ross's firstborn son. 50 wasted no time linking up with Tia Kemp for a full tell-all video, where she sat down and completely aired out Rick Ross's dirty laundry. In the video, she basically said everything about Ross was fake, from his tough guy persona to his so-called drug kingpin lifestyle. She even spilled tea on Ross's other baby mamas, further fueling the drama.
As you listen to his raps, you would definitely believe him, but I mean, it was surprising that he would sit there and say he spends $200 a month on food. His jury is rented.
If I go where these other niggas can't go, $2 million worth of jewels on.
You know, possibly not real. His cars are being leased.
50, being the master troll that he is, saw an even bigger opportunity and announced that he would be publishing her tell-all book about her time with Ross. Luckily for Ross, that book never actually came out, but the damage had already been done. But as strategic as it was for 50 to dig into Ross's past and involve his baby mamas, this tactic eventually came back to bite him, because while Tia Kemp was cool with exposing Ross, another one of Ross's baby mamas, Lastonia Leviston, ended up being the one who turned the tables on 50. See, during the height of their beef, a S-tape of Lastonia leaked online, and it just so happened to feature 50 providing commentary as his infamous Pimpin' Curly character. According to Lastonia's lawsuit, 50 had illegally posted the video online, and she was not letting it slide. This lawsuit wouldn't be settled for years, but when it finally did get resolved, it had major consequences for 50. But even with this lawsuit looming over his head, 50 didn't slow down at all. He kept pressing Ross at every opportunity. Whenever he got the chance, he would take shots, keep the Officer Ricky jokes going, and remind people that Ross was a fraud. Ross, on the other hand, was trying to play it cool. He would still throw out an occasional diss track or send a subliminal message 50's way. But at this point, it was clear. He was playing checkers, while 50 was playing chess. And to make matters worse, 50 took things to another level of disrespect when he took pictures with Rick Ross's son while out in Las Vegas with Tia Kemp and Floyd Mayweather. This was one of the lowest blows in the feud, and even though a lot of people felt like 50 was going too far, he never backed down from his stance. Whenever he was asked about it in interviews, he would always bring it back to one key point. Rick Ross was a fraud. At this point, the Officer Ricky nickname wasn't just something being thrown around in rap circles. It had made its way into mainstream culture. 50 wasn't the first person to discover Ross's law enforcement past, but he was the one who made sure the whole world knew about it. And beyond just exposing him, the real victory for 50 was that he forced Ross to finally admit the truth. Because without that constant pressure, Ross probably would have never owned up to it. For years, Ross dodged questions about his CO past. Even when the proof was right in front of him, he tried to spin the story, deny it, or change the subject. But in 2014, something unexpected happened. On his track Rich as Gangsta from the album Mastermind, Ross finally rapped. "That's why I had to play the part. That wasn't me, it was a job."
Relatively easy, we could go to war. We could go to war.
For the first time in his career, Ross had finally admitted what 50 Cent had spent over 5 years trying to expose, and after that, in interviews, he eventually came clean about the whole thing. At the end of the day, 50 Cent had done what he set out to do. He forced Rick Ross to finally admit what the world had already suspected for years. But the real question was, did it actually ruin Rick Ross's career the way 50 had planned? Because let's be real, in hip-hop, the idea of a rapper being a cop or anything close to law enforcement was pretty much unthinkable. That was the one thing you just couldn't be if you wanted to be seen as a real street figure in the rap game. And yet, even after the big reveal, Ross still managed to keep his career afloat. So did 50 really win? Even though Ross took a hit in terms of credibility, what was interesting was that it didn't completely destroy him the way people thought it would. Yeah, it was embarrassing. Yeah, he became the butt of countless jokes. And yeah, every time he talked about being a boss or pushing weight, there was always a little asterisk next to his name. But despite all that, he kept going. He still had a strong fan base, and some people just didn't care about his past. They just wanted to hear good music. However, even though Ross continued dropping hits, there was something that couldn't be ignored. After he admitted the truth on Mastermind, his career wasn't quite the same. Before all this, he was dominating the charts, dropping platinum records, and sitting at the top of the game. But after the Mastermind album, Ross never hit #1 on the Billboard charts again. And when he dropped his next album, Hood Billionaire, it marked the lowest first week sales of his career at that time. For 50 Cent, the beef was a win, but it wasn't without its own setbacks. Even though he successfully exposed Ross, he also took some major losses along the way. The biggest one was in 2015. A court ordered 50 to pay $5 million to Lastonia Leviston, one of Ross's baby mamas, for leaking her S-tape. That lawsuit hit 50 so hard that he had to file for bankruptcy, something that people never let him live down. 50 tried to countersue Ross, claiming that Ross was actually the one responsible for leaking the tape. But at the end of the day, the lawsuit stood, and 50 had to take that L. Now, even though Ross took his fair share of hits, one thing he did manage to do was eventually take control of the narrative. Ross started speaking openly about being a CO, but he always tried to spin it as if he had some ulterior motive for taking the job. Now, even though Ross has tried to move past it, the truth is, the beef never really died. Even today, you can tell that Ross is still a little salty about the whole thing. Just look at how he went out of his way to respond when Charlemagne Tha God called 50 a diabolical genius.
Thinking the way I think of Charlemagne, he would know better than that. A diabolical genius doesn't file foreclosure, doesn't file bankruptcy, doesn't It's not a diabolical genius.
Ross tried to flip the script, pointing out 50's own flaws, but all he got in return was a reminder of how he got exposed. Rick Ross is still a successful rapper and businessman. Even though his album sales have dipped a little, he's still relevant in the industry. But what 50 Cent did was create a permanent stain on Ross's career. He made sure that anytime someone talks about Rick Ross, they can't ignore the Officer Ricky saga. No matter how much Ross tries to act like it doesn't matter, it's always there. It's part of his legacy now. And just when people thought the long-standing war between 50 Cent and Rick Ross was finally cooling off, these two found a new reason to go at each other, this time over Big Meech. For those who don't know, Demetrius Big Meech Flannery is one of the most infamous figures in hip-hop's connection to the drug game. He was the co-founder of the Black Mafia family, BMF, a massive drug trafficking and money laundering operation that left its mark on hip-hop culture. After spending years behind bars, Big Meech was recently released to a halfway house, and naturally a lot of big names in the industry pulled up to visit him, including 50 Cent. But when Meech linked up with Rick Ross, things took a turn. Now, to understand why this caused so much tension, you have to remember that 50 Cent has a direct connection to BMF. He's the executive producer behind the hit Starz TV series BMF, which is loosely based on the real-life story of the Black Mafia family, chronicling the exploits of Big Meech and his younger brother Terry Southwest T. Flannery. The show even stars Meech's real-life son, Demetrius Flannery Jr., as his father. So, in 50's mind, Meech spending time with his biggest rap enemy probably felt like a betrayal. And if there's one thing about 50 Cent, he's not the type to let stuff like this slide. It didn't take long before 50 jumped on Instagram to let his frustration be known. He posted and deleted a picture of a rat, along with some not-so-subtle text that referenced the Rick Ross's 2010 song BMF Blowin' Money Fast.
Rick Ross and Big Meech do an Instagram video together because Big Meech is doing this big concert. And so then 50 gets upset about that. Did 50 post anything, or did he just kind of unfollow Lil Meech?
Well, he posted a rat.
Now, instead of just brushing it off, Ross decided to hit back. In a video response, Ross mocked 50's BMF series, calling it lackluster and small budget, and then he took it a step further. Ross boldly claimed that he was going to produce his own BMF movie, saying, "I want to do a BMF film because you've been entertained by a lackluster small budget series. Now it's time to do a big budget film."
Yeah. So look, I do want to do a BMF film because you've been entertained by a lackluster, small budget series. Now it's time to do a big budget film.
At this point, it's safe to say that 50 Cent and Rick Ross will never be cool. But if there's one thing rappers should have learned from all this, is that if you're going to beef with 50 Cent, make sure you don't have any deep, dark secrets lurking in your past. Because if you do, he will find them. And by the time he's done with you, that secret will become the only thing people remember about you.